So, dear friends, are you ready to see a beautiful game that was played by the first women's world champion, Vera Menchik? She played this game against Mir Sultan Khan. Please don't miss out on the critical moment in this game where the machine suggestion differs from the human move that is obviously very, very strong. Vera Menchik chose the human solution. It's so easy to understand, and machine suggests an insanity. And please tell me your feedback. Give me your feedback on that very decision. This game shows pawn storms and impeccable endgame technique by Vera Menchik. Enjoy this lesson, folks. I recently talked to Luciana Morales about her course, The Queens of the Chessboard. We looked at some instructive games from the first 5 women's world champions. Vera Menchik really attracted my attention because of her positional style. Vera Menchik in this example shows us her beautiful endgame technique, also how she navigated the pawn storm middle game position. Very instructive moments in this game, folks. I will stop and I will ask you some key questions, okay? She's playing in this Hastings Christmas Congress, Hastings tournament in 1931, right? End of 1931. She's playing against Mir Sultan Khan. I'm sure many of you know him. He was born in British India, like a prodigy. Then he moved to Britain, and he actually became 3 times British champion in chess out of 4 attempts. He played against several strong players, including Capablanca and so on. He really took the chess world by storm by his natural gift and talent. Okay, so Mir Sultan Khan with white pieces and Vera Menchik with the black pieces. Let's begin and let's analyze this beautiful game together, folks. So Mir Sultan Khan opens with d4, and we will soon end up in Queen's Gambit declined exchange variation with c takes d5. Very common standard structure. Knight f3, c6, all natural moves so far. Queen c2. White is sort of signaling a long castling middle game, right? He sort of prepares castling long while also stopping the move bishop f5. You also need to understand, right, the multi-purposeness of such ideas in the opening. Bishop d6, of course, Vera Menchik, they lost the bishop to a very natural square. And here comes the first, let's say, inaccuracy, you might say, because the main line is bishop g5, right? White usually gets the bishop out before playing e3 in those structures. So the bishop doesn't get closed inside the pawn chain. In this case, Sultan Khan is going e3. Well, definitely the bishop is not happy, but at least he's gaining 1 tempo, you might say, for the bishop to go to d3. Vera Menchik plays very naturally. She simply castles short. She is not scared about this battery on this diagonal, right? And now, after bishop d2, one thing is very clear. This game will be very sharp because the white king is going to castle long very, very soon. And here comes a very standard plan for black. She first goes rook e8. Why? Because the rook is placed on a semi-open file, but she also prepares the next move of knight f8. Bernd Larsen says he never gets mated with a knight on f8. That's a very nice pattern to remember. The knight bolsters this h7 pawn from f8, and the knight itself is a very safe piece, you see. No white piece can attack and exchange that knight, and that knight's a great defensive piece. You see, she doesn't rush with pawn moves on the king's side. Why? Because then she will create a hook pawn for white to later open up lines. Already here, the first instructions for beginners to understand, right? How she refuses to push pawns, defends this pawn point of h7 with the move knight f8. All very standard so far. Long castle. Comes my question. Let's form a middle game plan from this position. I made a video about pawn storms in chess. Maybe some of you already have some intuition about how black should play this position. And you're a great player if you found the plan of b5. Of course, right? We want to simply roll the queenside pawns to gain more space, to chase away their pieces, and ultimately create an attack against the white king. Whenever kings castle on opposite flanks in chess, the game becomes very sharp and dynamic. In those moments, you need to really prioritize activity and king safety over material. Time is becoming much more important in such positions, and Vera doesn't lose time. Directly pushes the pawn to b5. Very logical move. Knight g5. Mir Sultan Khan is a very strong attacking player. He wants to go for his own attack on the king side. What's the problem? This point of h7 is already guarded by 3 black pieces, right? You're attacking h7 with 3 guys. I have 3 defenders. So we don't need to react to your idea of knight g5. Thus, Vera continues with the plan of a5. Pawn storm rolls forward on the queen side, folks. And here, well, white has to do something. And one point of knight g5 was the knight is controlling this e4 square as well. Thus, Sultan Khan goes e4. At least he activates the bishop and he sort of strikes against black's flank push from the center of the board, right? When they're attacking you on the flanks, usually you strike in the center of the board. You see, white expects black to take on e4 because then their pieces would find some nice squares in the center of the board. So, Vera Menchik first plays the move b4. Very, very strong move. This knight is now leaving that post, which means there is less control on this e4 square. This needs some calculation, of course, which she does properly. If you take on e4, folks, you allow knight takes e4 after takes, you gave white a good position basically. They repelled your attack and now they're also attacking this c6 point. White is having a good game, right? Even the bishop got active and so on and so on. You don't want that. That's why she plays the move b4 first. But you might ask yourself, what would happen if white played the move e5 anyways? Because in the actual game, Sultan Khan actually played the move knight a4. We'll come back to this position. But of course, she has calculated it. After e5, this move comes with a threat on the bishop, right? So you have no time to capture my pieces because I will take your bishop with a check. And you might even go to continue further. What if white recaptures and reiterates this fork on the black pieces? Here the problem is black has several choices to give the piece back in the best possible scenario. For example, h6 is a good move. Knight f3, knight e4. The knight finds this beautiful post in the center after takes. If you count the material in this position, folks, well, it's equal material, but black is a better position simply because of their better pieces. This d4 pawn is an isolated queen's pawn, a potential target and a weakness later on. I still have ideas to open up lines on the queen side. The knight on e4 is an excellent piece. There are ideas such as bishop g4 and maybe even rook b8 and so on later on. Black is having a very, very nice position here. That's exactly why after b4, Sultan Khan went knight a4. At least he tries to make it more difficult for black to open up lines on the queen side. He wants to block black's pawn storm on the queen side. But Vera takes on e4 and gives this IQP to white. Isolated queen's pawn was created on d4, but more importantly, she also gained this diagonal for her bishop. Okay? So after takes. In this position, many players, folks, they will make a defensive move. The pawn on c6 is hanging, and many players would make a very, very defensive move in this position. But Vera doesn't make that move. She reads the board properly. It's still a very sharp middle game where kings have castled on opposite flanks. So please stop the video and find Vera Menchik's beautiful move in this position. And you're a great player if you found the move bishop e6. This was the point, right? The bishop gets active and starts shooting on the queen side in this position. She doesn't mind giving up that pawn. Have you calculated what would happen if white would take the pawn and apparently create this fork on your rooks? And again, you're a great player if you found the move rook c8, alignment on the c file, the rook get active. As we know, the value of a pawn is not important in a position like this. And we are thanking you for giving us the open c file. Black is having a better position here, folks. Write very short calculations to justify the move bishop e6. That's exactly why Sultan Khan played the move king b1 in this position. And here comes the critical question. Maybe the key moment for the entire game. Also, maybe the most instructive moment for the entire game, folks. Please stop the video. Read the board properly. I talked about these things in my video, Pawn Storms in Chess. How do you think Vera Menchik play in this position? Folks, You're a great player again if you found Vera's move b3. This is a human solution and the machine disagrees. If you ask the machine gives h6 as the best move. I will come back to this position and discuss. It's insanity. It's insanity, folks. b3 is a human solution, folks, because what is our goal? Our goal in this position is to open up lines on the queen side, correct? Open up the b file, maybe the a file, and start attacking your king. We have to clear the pawns from the files to be able to attack as soon as possible in this position, and b3 does that. Beautiful move, because you're forcing a takes b3, you're creating a weakness on b3. Also, you anticipate moves like rook b8 later on to intensify the pressure on the pawn. By playing b3, you also stop white from playing b3 themselves. In this position, in fact, b3 will be a much better human move and a practical move for white, because they would disallow black from pushing b3 in this position. Later, they would have played moves like king b1, right? So Sultan Khan doesn't anticipate maybe the strength of the move b3, which was played by Vera Menchik. A takes b3, rook b8. We immediately see the point of this pawn sacrifice, right? The rook gets happy, the bishop gets happy, and the king is not feeling any safe on the queen side. That's how humans play this position. If you ask the engine gives h6 as the best. Don't ask me why, by the way, right? Don't ask me why, because to the human mind, this is insanity, because at some point you're giving this g4, g5 option to white. You're creating a hook pawn on the king side, right? The entire game plan of knight f8 was designed not to play the move h6 basically, and the machine is giving this, right? For example, then of course white plays b3, then machine gives rook c8 as the best, then white plays the positional pawn sacrifice g4, machine is not caring about that, just takes the pawn for nothing. You play rook g1, machine doesn't care. Machine is defending like a machine. Bishop h5, bishop h6 is here, come on, right? Engine is still giving this as the best choice for black. To a human eye, you messed up. To a human eye, you lost control, right? White is not even sacrificing anything. They are attacking you on the king side. Their pieces are so happy. And this position, again, machine evaluates as better for black. Queen e5 exclam, and black is better, says Stockfish. Come on, guys, right? It's a beautiful segment of how human play differs from engine brute calculations in chess. To a human eye, b3 is so logical, practical, easy to understand, and easy to plan for, right? That's exactly why Vera plays the move, folks. And that's also in my video, Pawn Storms, right? You open up files for your pieces with those positional sacrifices. Knight c5 is the main try, because at least he tries to guard the pawn on b3 and force a bishop versus knight trade if black wants to get the pawn back. That's the game continuation, folks. Queen takes c5, because if white takes back this way, then they lose after bishop takes b3. So Sultan Khan takes back with the queen, but of course that drops the pawn on b3. And please look at the strength of the bishop on b3, folks. That bishop is an excellent piece. The b2 pawn is also a weakness, right? You might say. The king is not feeling any safe. Black's attack is starting first, as we say. While white still has so many moves, right? To build their pawn storm on the king side. There's not even a hook pawn that we gave to white in this position to open up lines. The game continues, folks. Knight e6. Beautiful move. Double attack, right? Queen c3. And here again, would you play the move queen takes d4 or moves like a4 in this position as black? Please evaluate the queen trade, folks, in this position. Would you trade the queens as black in this position? A practical decision for you. Folks, interesting moment. Vera Menchik trades the queens with the move queen takes d4 in this position, and that's a dubious move. Objectively, black should have kept the queens on the board. Why? Because the white king is less safe. That is the argument in this position. For example, you would go a4 to cement the bishop, but also at some point you want to play a3, right? To exploit the alignment on the b file. Even in this position, c5 was a much better move than queen takes d4 with a couple of ideas. If you take my pawn to begin with, then I can take back with the knight. Well, your queen is overworked on the bishop. If you take my knight, then my attack is starting first on the queen side, and black is winning this position because of the attack on the b file. You see how unsafe the white king is. And if you don't take my knight, then my knight is becoming an excellent piece. I activate my queen as well. Your king is not feeling any safe, right? It again revolves around the king's safety. You keep the queens on the board because you trust your attack. So after c5, d5 is also a try. The problem is now I can take that pawn for nothing. You can't punish me through this d file. Black is still having a much better game, right? So again, we should forgive Vera Menchik of not maybe calculating these moves and entering the endgame with an extra pawn. Because comes my question, can white grab the pawn on a5 in this position? Please blunder check the move. Bishop takes e5. What was Vera Menchik's point when she entered this line? Looks like white can get the pawn back in this position. And you're a great player if you understood this was a blunder. Why? You're a great player again, folks. If you found the move rook takes e4, bishop c2 check, and you pick up the rook on the next turn, black is having an extra piece and a winning position. So Vera Menchik probably calculated the sequence. She understood correctly. White cannot get the pawn back, which means white is down a pawn in this endgame. If Sultan Khan found the move bishop d3, it will be a much harder task for black to convert this position. And from now on, Vera Menchik starts playing beautiful endgame. I want you to focus on how she's forming the winning plan as black from this position. Extra pawn, but how do you convert? Another beautiful lesson is waiting for us, folks, in this segment. Bishop f4 hits the rook goes to c8. Defending c6 just in case, but also, well, following up with the plan of c5 to roll the pawn to cement the knight, folks. Bishop d3, knight e6, hits the bishop on f4. After bishop e5 comes c5. Again, that's black's extra pawn in his position, so black is forming a very natural plan of potentially rolling the pawn. As mentioned, you also support ideas like knight d4 in this position. And from now on, after rook d8 to escape the bishop's attack, Vera is playing excellently. She's almost finding the best move after best move for the next 10 moves until the game ends, folks. Please watch how Vera Menchik, a positional master, right, endgame master, as Luciana has told me, is playing in this endgame. First move is knight d4. The knight is getting this excellent point on this outpost on d4, and she's welcoming this trade. Do you take back with the rook or with the pawn? A very instructive question again, folks. Well, in the actual game, she made the correct move. C takes d4. Why? Because I also activate my rook on c8. I also create a passed pawn. My rook is placed perfectly behind the passed pawn. Both of my rooks are happy after c takes d4. If you take back this way, you're making white's task much easier to defend this position because the pawn is blockaded by the bishop, and now rook e1 is coming, and where is your invasion? There is no invasion on c2. Your extra pawn doesn't do much as black in this position. It's a beautiful judgment to take back with the pawn on d4. Black is intensifying the advantage. Bishop d3 is the only way to stop such ideas, also to stop the pawn, right? But Vera sees further. Look at her move, folks. Rook v8 again. We saw this many times in this game so far. Alignment on the b file, even in the endgame. One idea is a simple move a3 to open up the b file, right? It's a beautiful move. King a1 to escape those ideas. Here she plays another strong move, rook b4. Defending the pawn on b4 this way, potentially releasing the rook on d8-2, maybe even doubling up at some point on the b file. Multi-purpose move. Rook e1, the opponent's idea, folks. They want to mate us on e8, and Vera plays the multi-purpose bishop e6. Now the bishop is clearing the b file and also coming up to a very safe square on e6. Rook e5 was the game continuation. And here, again, you can stop the video here, folks, and find Vera Menchik's beautiful idea. How do you intensify your advantage on the queen side? And again, you're a great player if you found the move a3. What a beautiful move this is. She plays like an engine for the last 5 or 6 moves in this endgame. Well, if you take the pawn on a3, here comes my key question. Black to play and win. There is only a single winning move here for black. You can do it, folks. You can do it. And the answer is rook a8, and there is no answer to this beautiful move, rook takes a3. See how white is helpless in guarding the pawn on a3, and see how the white king is still feeling unsafe, even in this endgame. That's why she kept both rooks on the board at that key moment, by the way, folks, right? You can't close the a-file. There's nothing else to do for white. In fact, they will get mated very soon. So after a3, well, Sultan Khan couldn't take it, but then there's a huge threat of a takes b2. That's why he plays the move b3. But of course, she takes the pawn for nothing. Now black has 2 extra pawns. She simply puts the rook on the second rank and plays simple chess. Black is completely winning in this position, folks. Bishop takes e6, f takes e6. Sultan Khan played the move rook a5. What would happen if they took the pawn on e6? Now the pawn is rolling. Rolling. There is nothing white can do. If you attack this guy as well, I can roll the pawn, and the game is completely finished, folks. The game is completely finished. If you play the move, then rook c8 resembles the real game. Rook c1 decides the game in black's favor. So after bishop takes e6, f takes e6, rook a5 was tried, but Vera doesn't care to defend that pawn, but focuses on her biggest asset of the pawn on d3. Rolls forward. She doesn't even care about the rook on b2, right? See the effect of the pass pawn. And after rook d1, very strong move again, rook c2, with a huge threat of rook c1 check. The only move is king b1, and again, it's your turn. Black to play and force a resignation, and you're a great player again. If you want the move rook c8, there is no answer to the move rook c1. Rook c1 will force the promotion of the pawn. There is nothing white can do against this idea. This rook cannot move and guard the rook on d1 as well. The game is completely over. Sultan Khan resigned in this position. She was a very strong player, right? Vera Menchik. Very positional, also endgame, very technical endgame player herself. Luciana also mentioned the same thing to us. She learned from Capablanca, I guess. She was playing as very strong players. She even beat Max Uwe as a player, right? She actually beat the world champion. I think this game features 3 key lessons for beginners and intermediate players to learn from. See how e3 was dubious for white. They should have got the bishop outside of the pawn chain to start with. And also see how knight f8 was a very nice defensive move that she refused to create a hook pawn on the king side. And see how she quickly started an attack on the queen side. See how she refused to defend the pawn passively but went for an active counter attack. She invited white to take the pawn on c6. That's a beautiful thing to understand from this game. And maybe the key moment for the entire game, see how her move b3 was so human to understand, so logical. If you look at the engine gives moves like h6, which makes 0 sense to my mind. So 3 times British champion Mir Sultan Khan joined the Vera Menchik club with this loss. Salman Floor won this tournament in Hastings. Vera scored 3 out of 7 games. She played okay. She finished in the middle of this table. Please summarize your lessons from this game. Was there something novel or new or surprising to your mind? Summarizing the key lessons using your own words is great for consolidating the knowledge. Use this chance and leave a comment on YouTube, and I will respond to each and every one of you. For example, please tell me your ideas about the difference between b3 and h6 and how come engine is favoring the move h6 over b3. I didn't make much sense of it. Maybe you saw further than me. Please share your ideas and we understand this position in a little bit in better depth. Okay? And again, Luciana Morales, Women International Master, create the course. Queens of the Chessboard starts with Vera Menchik, very strong player, the first woman world champion. She died tragically in 1944 by a bomb in London. So, Vera, you're a great player. Thank you so much for giving us those beautiful lessons that we are learning together. I will catch you on the next episode, and I'm wishing you all the best, folks. Bye-bye.